And we welcome in Senator Kristin Phillips-Hill from the 28th Senatorial District here on WSBA. Good morning, Kristin. How are you this morning?
Good morning, Gary. Great to be with you this morning.
Good to have you in. I know we have a short time this morning, so I wanted to get right to it. There is a constitutional, and it's been coming for a while, but a constitutional question now looming. You were part of the State Assembly that passed the resolution the other night that basically would end the emergency powers right now, or end the emergency time. The governor says, no, I can veto that. The State Assembly says, no, it's a resolution. You can't veto a resolution. And obviously, you and I have talked before, as well as with other representatives, that there's a role to be played here, we think, by both the legislative and the executive parts of our state government. And yet the governor has pretty much been the guy in charge ever since March. And it looks like it's heading for a showdown, at least in the Supreme Court here in Pennsylvania. What's your take on what has happened here? I think all of us are very sensitive to, we need to have, somebody can work on things on a day-to-day basis. That's where the executive comes in. But the legislative authority, which is where you live in the state house, also needs to have a role, too, in terms of providing funds and things like that, and that cannot be usurped by another branch of government. So we're trying to find a balance point here. Where do you sit on this whole thing right now?
Well, I have been very supportive of the resolution and was very grateful to have the opportunity to vote on it. I think that it is essential that we restore the checks and balances to our government. No one should be able to go it alone. That's not the way our founders envisioned our government working, nor the way that they constructed our government under the Constitution to work. And so we passed the resolution. And I think early on, Gary, when it was first, the declaration was first issued, the temporary sacrifices made sense. Mm-hmm. We were unsure. It was unprecedented times. But as the time went on, the governor dispensed with any type of bipartisan decision-making and began ruling strictly by executive fiat. And we felt it was important to put us back on the right course. And we passed the termination of the emergency declaration. And the governor came out yesterday at 1 o'clock and said that he had no intent of complying with the law. And so you understand, by way of background, Title 35, Section 7301 states very clearly that upon the passage by the House and Senate of a concurrent resolution terminating a disaster declaration, that the governor shall, not may, but shall issue an executive order or proclamation ending the state of disaster emergency.
So he doesn't get a choice on this.
We anticipated that this may be the path that he would choose, and so we filed in court yesterday to compel him to issue that proclamation ending the state of disaster emergency.
Right. And again, that obviously will end up, I guess, in court. It already is in court now, where you have basically sued the governor to get that done. Is that correct?
Essentially, yes. And remember, nothing in the statute requires this resolution to go to the governor for a signature or veto.
Right.
A concurrent resolution is not an exercise of the legislature's lawmaking authority that he can either sign or veto. The governor is statutorily required to issue an order terminating the declaration. If the House passes the resolution, right, as it's adopted by the Senate, which they did, he has no discretion in the matter.
It is fascinating to me to have watched the governor. You all have passed some legislation going to him that he has vetoed consistently. And now you're using the power that the legislature has with the resolutions, the concurrent resolutions by both houses. And the governor says, no, I'm not going to go by that. So you were supposed to go by the rules that gave the governor the right to veto legislation. And now you're using the resolution as a type of legislation to end the emergency powers. And the governor says, no, I'm not going to go by that. It's kind of an interesting hypocrisy going on here.
It is, and the reality is that the people have said enough is enough. Their patience has worn out, and they demanded their representatives in state government to stand up for them and end the hypocrisy. And that's what we did this week.
We
and I think it's also
Go ahead,
important, Gary, to note that what we did this week addresses the immediate issue. But one of the things I've always said is I wish that the people who sat in these seats 10, 20 years ago had foresight. And in an attempt to have some foresight, the Senate also approved a constitutional amendment to limit the length of future disaster declarations. So it says that any future emergency disaster declaration cannot be extended beyond 30 days without legislative approval, right? We understand that there are going to be crises that we're going to have to swiftly address. But if it goes beyond 30 days, the governor needs to come back to the representatives of the people to get approval
and make the
for
case.
Renewal.
Yeah, make
Correct.
your case again. You know, it's having been a person that taught history for a long time, I understand when we have a triumvirate kind of government here, 3 branches, that different branches are going to have a little bit more power dependent upon the times in which we live. And I think anyone who maturely discusses that understands that. Yet at the same time, you know, for example, the governor may have more power coming out of the gate in an emergency like this because of all the things we did not know about. But I think the point of having 30 days as opposed to 90 days power is a much safer one for a country that espouses liberty and freedom. Otherwise, we feel that they are infringed upon. And I think a lot of people are feeling that way now, which brings me to tomorrow. Tomorrow we go into the green phase, although I would suggest that a lot of people have started early on that. I was going by a number of restaurants last night where people were dining in, and it's almost like people said, "The heck with this. We're getting started. We don't care about waiting to Friday." I don't know if you saw the same thing, but it's very interesting now to see the attitudes of people as we kind of come out of the darkness, so to speak, and back out into the light. Your thoughts about going green tomorrow and what all of that entails?
Well, I have confidence that people are going to safely, intelligently, and responsibly go back to living their lives. And I certainly could tell, Gary, when I drove up to Harrisburg yesterday morning, the volume of the traffic on Interstate 83 at 6:30 in the morning was a clear indicator that we're beginning the process of opening back up. So I think it's exciting. I think it's important because we have seen the most restrictive shutdown. We've had the second greatest number of unemployed people. The York County Economic Alliance says that 30% of the businesses that have been shut down may never reopen again. We've had significant numbers of deaths in nursing homes. The waiver process that picked winners and losers. Our economy has on the verge of being in shambles. People's livelihoods are being destroyed, and I think people are ready, and the time is now, and it's a good thing.
Senator Phillips-Hill, always appreciate your time. Thank you for taking the time this morning. We'll keep our eye on what's going on with this suit and also what's happening with who is going to share the power here going forward. But always a pleasure having you in, and thank you for your insights.
Thank you so much, Gary.